Hello, and welcome back to the Real Deal podcast where we talk about everything real, raw, and relatable. I'm going to begin this episode by asking you all a question. How many times have you told yourself, I should have done better, I'm not good enough, or I let them down? I'll give you 5 seconds to think your answer. Pretty sure most of you would have said something like this before, or at least, have had these thoughts come to you before. So, the thoughts that we are going to talk about, the emotion that we are going to dissect today is guilt and shame. Now, it's very, very important to understand they both are different. Feeling guilty is very different to feeling shameful. And it's also important to acknowledge that these emotions are very heavy. We also carry them as like really heavy baggages in our lives. Today, through this episode, what I intend to do is kind of unpack the difference between guilt and shame. Let's tackle it one by one and see how they affect us, how we can begin to start releasing ourselves from their hold. Now, on a very basic level, let's understand what is guilt and what is shame. Guilt is something which is linked to your behavior. It is something like, okay, I did something bad. Now, shame is something which is linked to identity, which is you telling yourself that you are bad. Saying I did something bad is very different from saying I am bad. Guilt sometimes motivates us to do better things, but if we find something which we tell ourselves that this is shame, we kind of start disconnecting, and we also kind of start getting the feelings of being unworthy. Now, these are like the main, like the base in the basic way. If I have to explain guilt and shame, this is what it is. Now that we kind of got an idea about what guilt and shame is, let's now understand where does this actually come from. Okay, the first and foremost thing, which I feel like we all know, but we tend to not know, the first and the most important reason is your childhood conditioning. Your childhood defines pretty much most of your actions as adults. Now, with or without your knowledge, your subconscious holds a lot of different emotions, which we can always deny and say, oh, I was not like this in my childhood. I never had something like this in my childhood. But some truths are hidden here, We fail to express them, but it's true that whatever you go through as a child affects you so much when you grow up. If you have grown up always listening to things that, oh, you always disappoint us, you're never good, you should be a good person, you should be that, the conditioning that you go through as a child, it impacts you so much. The more somebody keeps telling you when you're growing up, the more somebody keeps telling you that you're a disappointment, you're not fit to be a part of this family, you're not a good son, you're not a good daughter, the more and more people say this, the more and more your brain starts to condition you to say that this is what it is. You start filling yourself with shame, saying that, okay, I am a disappointment, I'm anyway a bad person, I'm anyway a bad daughter, I'm anyway a bad son, so I might as well do something bad because they anyway think I'm bad. You kind of start telling yourself that you are that bad person, you are the person who brings disappointment to others. So that is one of the major reasons where the guilt and shame starts from. The next one is cultural and societal expectations. All of us, I'm pretty sure all of us would have been in situations where people around us have so many expectations out of us, and when we don't stand up to their expectation, they start shaming us. They start making us, feel guilty of our actions, feel shameful of our actions. They might have nothing to do with us. There might be just a random person, probably your neighbor, probably, your friend's friend, friend's parents. It might be your parents' colleague, parents' friends. They might not have an immediate connection to you, but even they have the power to make you feel guilty and shameful if you let that happen. Now, the third reason why we might feel guilt or shame is because of the internal perfectionism that we have. Other people having expectations from us is different from us having our own expectations. And some of us take it so deeply that if we do not achieve or if we are not perfect in certain thing, we start like having that feeling of shame. We like start going on that guilt tripping where we tell ourselves we are losers. The fourth reason is some of the past mistakes that keeps replaying in our heads. We might all have had some or the other bad experiences, right? That might bring some guilt or shame. And it's a very like a human tendency to replay negatives more than the positives. You might have had hundreds of positives that has happened to you, but what you kind of replay in your head is the negatives. It's the guilt. It's called like guilt tripping. Like you're just playing it on loop. And the more and more you do that, the more shameful you feel of your own actions. Now, is this something that you're not supposed to feel, but you're feeling it? No. It's very important to feel every kind of emotion to understand yourself better. And it is very important also to feel guilt or feel shame. But what you do with that feeling is what defines how, your actions will be or how your mindset will be. I'm going to quote an example of how guilt and shame kind of affected me at one point. In 2019, my mom was here to stay with us for a month. And there was a day when I had a very big fight with her. This was, I think, 2 or 3 days before she left. And I said a lot of things in a fit of anger. And then I apologized. And then, like, it was all on a ground level, it was all fine. And then she went back to India. When she went back, I think for almost 4 or 5 months, the amount of guilt that I had for whatever I did with my mom, the way I screamed at her or the way I spoke to her, it almost mentally killed me every single day. I would cry so much out of that guilt, and I was very, very, very shameful of my act. And I kept telling myself, what kind of a daughter am I? Why would I scold my mom? It's fine to have a fight, but then, sometimes we kind of tend to oversay a lot of things, and then you realize the kind of impact it has made on the other person. I was probably taking out different frustration, but on her. It was probably not even related to her, but the amount of guilt I had. And I would just call her and I would start crying and I would just apologize so much because I was extremely, extremely guilty for what I've done. And it's only after a few months that I actually got over that feeling. But even now, sometimes if I'm sitting alone and I'm thinking something, or if I watch a random TV show or a scene where somebody is scolding their mom, and I immediately get reminded of that incident. So some of the signs that actually explain that you're carrying a guilt or shame is constant self-criticism. You keep criticizing yourself. Everyone does mistakes, right? Everyone has guilt, everyone has shame. But after a point, we need to come out of that feeling when we know things are sorted. There is no point in playing it on a loop in your head. It's fine. Everyone makes a mistake. And we just have to move forward and not get stuck in the past. And my mom used to always say, Vedu Kanda, it's okay. Which means like, let it go, dear, it's okay. The next sign is over apologizing. Sometimes when you have not even made a big mistake, you still start apologizing just because you have previously said something to someone. And you're trying to kind of having that difficulty where if the same person gives you a compliment, if the same person shows you some love, then you start feeling guilty that they're doing so much for me. Why did I do this? You again, as I said, it's a loop. So these are the signs to say that you're going through a phase where you're feeling a lot of guilt and shame, and you kind of avoid opportunities because of this opportunity to be with that person, probably because you don't feel worthy. You're telling yourself, I did so and so to them long time ago, so I don't think I deserve to be around them. That long time is done. It's over. It's different if the other person didn't accept your apology, or you're not in contact anymore. That's a different feeling. We are going to delve into it in the coming episodes. But what I'm saying is, when you have expressed, you're apologized, you've felt the guilt, you've felt the shame, but then you have to move on. As we speak more around guilt and shame, I also have a few steps that I have written down which helped me during my healing, and I would just want to share it with you guys as well. Firstly, it's so important to separate guilt from shame. Guilt is telling yourself, I made a mistake, and shame is telling yourself, I am the mistake. I am guilty of whatever I said to my mom, but I am not a bad daughter. If I start feeling like I am a bad daughter, that's like a very shameful thing for me. I will not be able to process emotions organically if I start telling myself I'm a bad daughter. If I start telling myself whatever I'm doing is wrong. So, whatever emotion that you have right now, right? If listening to this episode reminded you of something that you have done, ask yourself, is it a guilt or is it a shame? The next one, self compassion. It's very important to know that as human beings, we all make mistakes, right? But the more you start criticizing yourself just for existing, because you think that whatever you do is going to be a mistake, then that negative self talk is not going to help in any way. It's very, very important to have that compassion towards yourself. It's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. You did a mistake. It's fine. Acknowledge it and also know that that is not your identity. That mistake is not your identity. The next one, guilt can be repaired if needed. And also, very, very important to understand that it can also be released by apologizing or making amendments. You can always go back to the person and apologize for your actions. You don't have to get consumed with that guilt and feel like, turning that guilt into a shame. We all have the tendency to do that as human beings. But it's very, very important to keep our, pride or ego aside. And then if this guilt is consuming us, it can be released by apologizing, by going and talking to the person whom we have hurt. The next step, rewriting the way you think. Instead of telling ourselves time and again that we are not enough, very, very important to understand that you're learning and growing. Nobody is born perfect. Nobody is perfect. Nobody can ever be perfect. We will all have our good qualities and we will all have our flaws. So, very, very important to acknowledge it and also tell ourselves that we are learning and growing. You cannot avoid making mistakes. At one point or the other, we will all make mistakes. We will all hurt other people. But what you do with it is what defines, how you build your life going forward. If you keep making mistakes and not apologize to anybody and, not think that you can also make mistake and keep thinking that you're always perfect, then that will not help in any way. None of us are. It is not possible at all for a human being to not have a flaw. So don't be of the feeling that I'm not enough. And the last one is share your story with someone trustworthy. Now, I keep telling it in all my episodes how important it is to find someone as your safe space to speak to them, to disclose whatever you're going through, and know that you have them by your side. Not everyone is fortunate to have someone or the other whom they can trust, and I can totally understand it. I was at a stage in my life where I didn't even have a single friend to share whatever I was going through, and I instead chose to write it in my diary. But please know that my DMs are always open. Even if you don't have anybody in your life with whom you can share your things, please know you can always reach out to me. My Instagram profiles are public. You can always message me on the Real Deal Instagram page, and always, if you're someone whom I know closely, you can always reach out to me on phone or messages. So these are some of the steps that I did. I kind of practiced when I was going through that phase of, learning so much about myself. Until date, I feel like that has been the best experience ever for me. So on a closing note, I just want to say guilt and shame are very, very powerful, right? But it's important to remind yourself that they don't define you. And it's also important to remind yourself that you're worthy of forgiveness, you're worthy of love, and you're worthy of growth. So next time when you catch yourself in that loop, thinking that I'm not good enough, I'm not a good daughter, I'm not a good son, or I'm born to bring shame to the family and things like that, please know and remind yourself that You're as human as anyone else is, and you're learning and growing. Mistakes are a part of life. You can't avoid them, but what you do with them defines everything else. So, if today's episode spoke to you and if you felt related, or if you feel like you know somebody who might be able to relate to this and get some insights from it, then I would really appreciate if you can share this with them and let them know that they're seen and heard. We have all been there, and we're all there for each other in some way or the other. You might not even know me, but you might still feel related by listening to this podcast, because human journeys in a lot of ways can be so relatable. And don't forget the free download as well that comes with each of these episodes. Please download them and please practice those prompts as I mentioned in the previous episode. If you do not want to write it down, if you do not believe in writing down your thoughts, or you're typing it on or doing a voice recording, you can just look at the prompts, ask those questions and answer just in your mind. Just practice it, so at least you know, you can start defining the kind of feelings that you're feeling and not get confused or overwhelmed with the amount of feelings that you have. So on that note, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. I will see you next week.